This is Inside the Wolf's Den, an entrepreneurial journey with Sean and Joni Wolfswinkle.
Welcome back to Inside the Wolf's Den with your hosts, Sean and Joni Wolfswinkle. Today we have a few guests with us. We have Ben Smith and Kristen Lopez. How are you guys?
Great.
Doing great.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. So the topic for today's episode is going to be mastering sales and outbound calling, strategies for success. So Ben and Kristen, why don't you give us a little background on yourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm Ben with Discover. I have been in the property management industry for about 5 years. Right now, I run our sales team, which consists of Kristen and I over at Discover. Before that, was with a company called Filter Easy, which then changed to Second Nature. Spent about 4.5 years there, originally as an outbound sales rep, reaching out to property management companies about our filter solution, and then eventually RBP. And then I also led a sales team over there as well before I came over to join Discover. So other than that, I'm based in Raleigh, North Carolina. That's where I call home. I've got a wife and a couple little girls, Annie and Helen. So awesome. That's about it for me. Kristen, what about you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have also been in the property management industry for the last 5 years. Real estate in general, though, for the last 10 years, which is crazy to say. In property management, I was a business development manager for a property management company in San Antonio. And then after that, for the last 3 years, I was coaching at Rentscale, and I was coaching business development managers. And while I was there, I've coached probably close to almost 200 BMs. And then now I am working here at Discover. So definitely been in the sales game for quite a while. And like Ben, outside of work, I have 2 wonderful children, a boy and a girl, and I love time with them and with my husband.
Awesome.
Nice. You know, Kristen, I always tell the story. You don't know it because I think we met maybe a couple times, but the first time I met you was at, I think, a Rentscale conference. I think there's Scales Club in Nashville or something. And
oh my gosh.
Yes. And I remember you actually sitting up there. You were doing some sales role playing. And I came back and I told Sean, this girl is awesome. Like, she is killing it. Like, you were impressive. So I will say that you have masters of sales.
That was before I worked there. That's whenever I was a BDM. We went to that in Nashville, and I played objection ball, which it was so scary. Something inside of me was like, raise your hand, Kristen.
Nobody would.
Okay, inner voice, I'll do it.
You killed it. I was like, wow, I'm impressed.
So can you tell us a little bit about Discover and like what is it? Tell us all about it. What is it? What do you guys do? Who do you serve? Just give like, I don't know, your sales pitch on it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So Discover is a real estate investment analysis platform. So our founder, Morgan Cole, owned a property management company right in your neck of the woods in the Spring, Texas area. And, he identified a couple problems over the course of running his management company. One, helping his investors actually understand how their property was performing, helping them make, smart, data-driven decisions about whether to buy more or to sell, rather than emotional decisions about, hey, we were just talking about how hot it is, right? The AC went out. Oh, no, I'm losing money. I need to sell this property, right? So it's part to help educate investors on the performance of their property. And we help property managers do that. And we also help property managers identify investors that own portfolios in their markets. So that's part of why we talk so much about outbound, right? Going out and finding the people that you actually want to work with. They own, multiple properties, right? Not just the single, maybe accidental landlord type profile, but folks that are intentional investors who are looking to grow their portfolios, gives them the data they need to go and prospect to those folks.
Also, is it just for property management companies, or do you also service, I guess, investors that are looking to acquire property? And is it?
Great question. No, we definitely serve both. So, an individual investor can sign up on our site to run an analysis of the property that they own. But they can also search any address in the United States, and maybe they've got an opportunity that's on or off market and they want to see how it might perform. They can evaluate it through the platform. And we also help investor agents too. So some property managers do both, but then there's obviously some folks that are just focused on the acquisition side. So we've got a product where an investor agent can look live on our platform, see what's currently on the MLS, and view it through the lens of a potential investment. So sort of kind of think of it as like Zillow for investors, right? Rather than looking at a house that you might want to live in, looking at a house that you may want to purchase as an investment.
And does it so say they source something or off market, let's say it's like leads, or do you just facilitate the list and then help them target them, and or do you also, like, is there any outbound, and I guess get like a little deeper?
Yeah. So, in terms of an investor looking at a property that's off the market, what they can do is they can go in and they can put in, what they think a potential purchase price might be, or maybe they have something in mind already, what they think they could get the property for. They can tweak really any operating expense you can think of, HOA costs, insurance, if there's rehab money that needs to be put in, maintenance expense, that sort of thing. And investors can absolutely use it as a prospecting tool. Our each page includes some records about who owns the property, whether it's an individual or an LLC, right? And so it's funny, we were just on another podcast talking about this. A lot of folks are having a hard time finding deals right now. So, one of the things we were talking about is, look, if there are certain neighborhoods you like to be in, or areas of town that you think are good opportunities, why not seek out folks and see if they would be open to selling their property, or, maybe taking the approach of, hey, I'd love to buy in your neighborhood. If you know of anyone that may be thinking about selling, I'd love an introduction. So there's quite a few use cases for the site from that standpoint as well.
Awesome. Something that we've been doing is outbound calling, and especially it's important in today's market. And Chris, I kind of want you to discuss a little bit about, the fundamental and maybe some principles of successful outbound calling. Like maybe give some listeners some tips on maybe preparing, all that, value proposition, all of it.
Yeah, that's great. So I think that whenever it comes to outbound calling and just outbound in general, it's important before you dive into it to set the right expectations for yourself of what am I really doing here? What am I really going to be talking to these people about? And I love that you added in there about the value prop, because deciding what it is that you're calling for can not only help you to get better responses, but can also help your mindset. Because as we approach outbound is difficult. Like, it is difficult for us to even wrap our minds around of, I am going to call someone, and then the fear sets in of, I'm going to disrupt them, or they're probably doing something. Why would they even want to talk to me? And I read this in this book, Jeb Blunt. That's selfish, right? Because you're thinking about yourself, right? You're thinking about how it's going to impact you, how uncomfortable you're going to be. Whenever we're doing outbound, if we're doing it with the right reasons and the right messaging, now easier, right? If I know that I'm calling because I am genuinely and truly going to help someone with a problem they may not even know that they have, then those are the expectations that I have. Like, I'm not calling to close you. I'm calling simply to have a conversation, see if you have a problem and something that I can solve. So if we have that expectation going into it, the next piece to that is consistency, right? The biggest thing to get through in outbound is your mindset. And second piece is doing it consistent.
Right.
Because we can work up all of our courage and do it once, and we may not get very good results, but it's on the 5th time, the 10th time. It's just like working out. The first time, terrible. And after, it hurts. And then the 5th time you do it, by like month 3, you're like, oh, I can do this. Wow, look at me. I'm getting stronger. I'm getting better. I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to be doing. So that's the best way to think about outbound. Is the biggest hurdle, though, is mindset. And the best way I found to get over mindset is that value. What is the value that I'm actually bringing to this person? And if we're calling with that in mind, now I'm not bothering people. Now I am like saving people. I'm helping them through their problems. So I would say those are the two biggest pieces with outbound there. Ben, anything you would add to that?
No, I think that's great. And it's, Kristen kind of mentioned it a little bit, but, getting yourself to actually pick up the phone and make cold calls, like so much of it is mental, right?
Yeah.
And so getting yourself in the right mental headspace to do it. Part of it is having the confidence in what you're going to say, but also the confidence that you do have something to offer and that you can provide value to someone. Because if your mindset is I'm just trying to sell someone, then you're it's going to be hard to do, because you're going to get rejected a lot, right? Nobody wants to be sold to,
Right.
But then that's just going to feed into kind of the insecurity of, man, I can't do this, or this doesn't work, right? How many times do you talk to someone who says, well, cold calling doesn't work? It's like, all right, well, how long did you do it for? Or what was, everybody has their kind of preconceived notions. But I do think that if you are really strong on your value proposition, then your odds of success are a lot higher.
Mm-hmm. Kind of reminds me. So Sean and I have a background. When we got started in real estate, we door knocked for about 10 years. And so, it's just like that. I mean, we knocked on, probably about 50 doors a week, right? Getting doors slammed in our face, but we kept doing it, kept getting up and kept doing it. And it is the mindset and the consistency. Those two are key. Yeah.
I mean, we came from that space. So, and even while we were building our property management company, we did a lot of investments. And so, we always, we went direct to sellers. So it was always, it was postcards back in the day. And then everything became direct, outbound calling and text blast. And so, which is now got frowned upon. But I always thought that outbound calling for property management company was like and I don't know what for years, until you guys came out with the software, we were like, we need to do this. It was always on our rock list. And then,
never got done.
We just never got there. But I think it's vital, but it's a long game. It's a little different in the investment space, because we're targeting very motivated sellers. So like foreclosure, they have like a timeline, there's a deadline that they have to make a decision a little quicker. But I think in what we're learning in the property management space, and even in investment space, it's all about timing, right? So it's about, you might have a great value add, but it might not be the right time for that particular client. There might be a little bit of pain with their current property manager, but maybe if you just keep nurturing that relationship, where we've seen success as they start to, for a couple months down the road, 3-4 months, all of a sudden, hey, okay, now they're not communicating, my property manager, now it's time to make a change. Hey, that company that called me, now it's time to make a change. So,
yeah. So one thing I have in mind is, so we have a lot of listeners that obviously own property management companies. Real Property Management's a big franchise. We have a lot of listeners there. But so when you're managing BDMs, business development managers, like what tips would you help them to kind of get in the right mindset and, just keep with their confidence and, kind of get them consistent with it?
I'll let the former BDM coach take that one first.
I think that in addition to the mindset stuff is to lower your expectation, right? Because what we expect, right? And we have to make sure that that's matching up with what we're doing, right? So if our expectation is I'm going to make these 10 calls and I want to close one deal, that may not be the right expectations for us to have at the beginning, because what happens then if we're setting really high expectations for ourselves and we miss one day, we're not going to want to pick back up the phone again the next day. So if we kind of lower those expectations a little bit of just completing the action, right? One of my mentors in the past told me, you marry the work and you divorce the results. So we're not even looking at results here. We are just simply doing the work, because if we do the work, the results will follow. So if we really start to just hone in on that of every single day, I'm going to do the work. And whether that work is 5 calls a day, 10 calls a day, you're ambitious, you're going to make 20 calls a day, fantastic. But marry that number and be so dedicated to it. And if you're consistently doing it, the results will follow. Because with outbound, you're going to have days where everybody's answering and it is just like raining appointments. And you're like, I am so good at this. I am amazing. I should write a book. And then the next day you come in and you're like, 2 people yell at you, they cuss you out and you're like, I'm terrible. What happened? Right. So, but it all averages out in the end. So it is truly about just putting your head down and doing the work and figuring out what motivates you, right? Like for myself, heavily motivated by food. I love food. Like I just do. So when I was making outbound calls, I would have like, no joke, like candy sitting next to me. And I'd be like, all right, this piece is for when I'm done with my first 5 phone calls. And this piece is for my next 5 phone calls.
Nice.
And then I'd have something extra special, like at the end, whenever I was done. So figuring out what motivates you is really important, because if you can gamify it, that's the other thing. I turn it into a game. Like, how can I take this 2-minute conversation and have the best outcome at the end? So turning it into a game and figuring out how to reward yourself can really keep you locked in to having to do these phone calls. And it doesn't have to be your whole day, right? It can be just pick the number, stick to the number, and consistently do it.
Yeah.
That'd be my advice.
Love it. Love it.
I think the consistency piece is so important. I think what I would add to that is, and Kristen kind of alluded to it, the time management piece, right? So if you're a BDM and let's say you're the only salesperson within your organization, you're likely taking inbound leads, right? You're likely doing consults, right? Your week, can be pretty full, but regardless of how busy you are, I think most people can make an hour or 2 or 2 or 4 hours, right? To do outbound. And so just being really intentional about blocking that time and committing to doing it when you have it blocked is really, to me, is really crucial. That's something that I've always done in my sales career. Because I think what can happen is, if you set let's say you set an activity goal of, hey, I'm going to make 50 calls this week. What I've seen happen in teams that I've managed, or even myself, especially early in my sales career, is, day one, all right, 50 calls this week. I'm going to do 10 a day. Monday, oh man, I had a really busy day. It's too busy. I've got the rest of the week to make up. So I'll just slide those 10 calls into the other 4 days of the week. And then before you know it, Friday rolls around and you have 50 phone calls to make. And it's this overwhelming number that you don't want to do, right? So time blocking can definitely help with consistency. And then the other thing I'd say is property management is a very process driven industry. I would say that it is as important to have a process developed for your outbound sales in order to be successful. And I know this is something that you guys do really well. Like, you're making cold calls, you're sending cold emails, you're doing text, direct mail, right? All of these things are kind of working together. And so, this is something that Kristen and I do now. It's like, Jenny, we just saw you at a conference, right? And so in the lead up to the conference, we have a couple emails that go out in advance, letting people know that we're going to be there, right? Then we're at the conference, we're having conversations, we're booking meetings. After the conference, we're doing follow-up, right? With the people we talked to and the people we didn't talk to. And the odds are, out of that list of everybody that we saw, there's going to be different points in the process in which we capture people, right?
Right.
Maybe we didn't capture anyone before the conference when they hadn't heard of us, but maybe that person heard me do a pitch or came by the booth at one point, right? So, to what you guys were talking about earlier, timing is important. And when you reach out to someone the first time, the timing might not be right. So dropping it after the first outreach is not a very good strategy, but continuing to follow up and kind of nurture that opportunity, ultimately, is going to lead a lot better results than if you just called them one time and then never call again.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
What about developing, you were talking about your sales pitch or people hearing you pitch, developing that sales pitch, your script. Do you guys believe in scripts? And especially maybe as a sales manager teaching your salespeople, do you have scripts? Do you role play? And if you do have a sales pitch and script, how do you keep your salespeople or yourselves? Like, say you get that client that kind of throws you for a loop, and then all of a sudden you're questioning your sales pitch. You start changing. All of a sudden your salespeople are saying a total different message because they got challenged.
Bring them back.
They got challenged. So can you speak to that? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Yeah, I would say, first of all, I definitely believe in scripts. I think it's especially important if you're just getting started out, right? Like, you probably, especially if you haven't come from the industry or don't have a background in it, right? It's important to have a script that you can follow, that you can always fall back on. Now, as a sales manager, what I hope is that my sales reps become so confident about what they're saying, they don't really need the script. It's just part of their conversation, and they can make it very conversational, right? I definitely, absolutely think role playing is really, really important. Before I got into property management, I sold insurance, and one of the companies I worked for had a sales coach that they brought in, and he talked about it like this: if you're a fighter pilot, and you're prepping, right, to be out in dogfights or whatever you're doing, the best way to prepare is to think about from every angle somebody could attack you. So if somebody's coming in from your side, what is the move that you're going to do to counter that? Or if they're coming in from back right, how are you going to counter that? And I think it's a perfect analogy for sales. It's like, if you become so confident in what you're doing and what your pitch is, but also how to overcome those objections, there's not really, it almost makes you laugh when someone throws something at you that you've never heard of before, because you're just like, well, where did that come from? But the reality is if you're a BDM in property management, like, there's probably a list of like 5 to 10 objections that you're going to get. And the rest is going to be like a very small percentile, right? So if you prepare and are confident about how you're going to respond to those main 5 to 10 objections, then, cold calling almost becomes a game, right? Hey, whatever you're going to throw at me, I'm ready for. I have something to say. And typically I think the best thing to do is ask questions anyways. It's not, somebody throws an objection at you, it's not hey, let's get in an argument about this. My first response to almost any objection is, okay, well, tell me more about that. Like, there's always a backstory to why they're saying that. And so asking really good questions, that sort of stuff definitely comes from role playing with people. And even if you don't have people on your team that are in the sales department, right, you could role play with a spouse or a property manager or the maintenance manager, right? Just give them some basic instruction, and I'm sure they can help you get prepared. So, Kristen, what would you add to that?
No, I love everything that you said there. I used to practice with my mom, because my mom is one of the most skeptical people I've ever met, right? Like, she just has questions about everything. So whenever I would enter into a new sales job, I'd be like, all right, Mom, let me tell you about what I'm doing. And then she would most of the time give me all of those scenarios of well, what about this? What about this? And I'm like, Mom, thank you so much, because you thought about all of the different angles. So practice is so important. And that's why I think, especially former athletes or people who are in acting or something where practice is so pivotal, make good salespeople, because you're used to we have practice, we have a game, we review the game tape, right? We have to have this process in place so that we can know how to get better. And it's the same thing in sales. Sales is an art and sales is a practice. And if you're not practicing with your team, or you're not practicing with somebody else, you're practicing on your prospects, and they are not the right people for you to be practicing on. They need your A game. They don't need you trying to figure out what you're saying. They don't need you stuttering. They don't need you trying to recall information. The practice is so important because it allows you to show up with confidence. And I was reading this book this last week. I think it's called Nudge. And in the book, they say that sales is actually, you are a choice architect, right? And you're trying to help someone to make a choice. And if you're not showing up with confidence, you're not going to help anybody make a choice. You're not going to inspire anyone to make a change. So the practice is where you pick up that confidence to be able to show up and be like, all right, throw what you've got at me, and I'm going to help you sort through your mess, and we're going to find you a path forward. Yeah. That's what sales is. And if you don't know how to sort through somebody's mess, if you're not doing the reps in practice, all you're going to do is show up and throw up, and you're just going to spit up all of the facts about the company, which don't actually help the prospect. So practice is important, in practicing with tough people that are actually going to throw you scenarios, because I found practice is always way harder than the actual calls. People in practice know what you're not good at. They know what you need help on. So they're just going to throw you those things. and then you're able to get feedback from it. So I'm big believer in practice, because without it, they're just practicing on the prospects. They don't need that. They need the A game.
I love it. Yeah. Talk about building rapport. I mean, when we used to knock on doors, I mean, my coach and mentor said, okay, like you have to try to build rapport as quickly as you can, right? And to get into that door. And so that can be hard for, a lot of people. And so maybe talk a little bit about that.
My outlook on rapport is one, everybody wants to relate to other people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's a natural thing that we all have. We want to relate to each other. The way that I think that that's done best is by taking a genuine interest in other people, right? Like it sounds obvious, but like, think about how many times you've been sold to where someone was just like looking right through you to their next paycheck, right? Or, wasn't really interested in your situation. And so I've always felt like, coming into conversations with a genuine interest in other people and the problems that they have, things that they like, or what's important to them, their goals, like that stuff, if it's genuine, like it really comes through. Like when I was at Second Nature and, I was covering Texas, right? Working with folks like you guys. The way that I always approached my discovery conversations was ultimately to get to, hey, like one, how did you get into property management? And two, like, what are your goals for your business? Right. And those two questions don't really have anything to do with the product that I was selling, but I was genuinely curious, like why are they in property management? What do they enjoy about it? And where do they want to get to? And I think people can recognize when that's genuine, and ultimately that's what helps set the stage for rapport. I on a more like practical level, like I always like to like look up if I'm having a call with someone, I look up what city they're in, right? And find something out, like if it's a place I've been to, like, hey, one time I was in San Antonio, I ate this incredible barbecue place. Like, have you been there? Like just stuff like that connects you and kind of takes the, I don't know, like the robotic nature of some of the conversations away of just like, here's the price, or what do you need? Or, just, I think it helps people let their guard down a little bit. So that's what I would say is it's the most important part of building rapport is just being as genuine as possible and taking an interest in other people and their lives.
Love it.
Maybe Kristen can answer this. How do you teach it too? I'm wondering, like, about active listening. So I think you both do it very well. And you kind of hit on it, Ben, a little bit with, you can tell when you're having a conversation with somebody and they're already thinking about their rebuttal, and, it's like they're not even listening to anything you're saying. So how do you not be that person and, truly listen to what the customer or the client is saying and like you said, have a genuine interest, but not, I understand you got to come up with what you're going to say, but not, I don't know, be more active in listening. And I think you both do it well, but maybe Kristen, you can answer, how do you do it so well? And then is it teachable, or is it just a natural thing?
No, I definitely think that it's teachable, but I think that just like anything, it requires discipline. I think that especially whenever we're on the phone, it's very easy to try to multitask. For anybody that's listening, I put that in air quotes, multitask. Because especially whenever we're on the phone, it is so easy to tell whenever somebody's distracted. Like they can hear your keys typing. You can hear when somebody is not fully invested in the conversation. So for me, especially whenever I'm calling, I have my phone and I have a notepad and I have a piece of paper and I am taking notes on what people are saying. I'm not writing down everything that they're saying. What I'm listening for is like inflection. What I'm listening for is really like, what are they really trying to say? And then I circle things that I want to go back and ask questions on. So I'm trying to really listen and listen for tone changes. Like that is the biggest thing that you're trying to listen for is whenever they're saying something, do they inflect at the end? Is that a question? Like, do you not understand what that means? And really just shut down everything else. don't look at the computer. Do not have any other tabs open. Don't try to answer emails, but just take that time and truly just be there and write things out, right? Like really take a pen and paper and write out what people are saying and then structure your conversation that way. I call that mental chess, where you're trying to think like 5 moves ahead when really you're just shooting yourself in the foot because you did not hear what they just said. And that may have been the key point to the conversation where they're talking about their pain points and you missed it because you're like, oh, I could sell them this, or I could add this onto the plan. That's not what we're doing. It just is, it's a practice of being present and kind of shutting everything else off and just truly listening to what people are saying. So I think it takes discipline. And for me, the biggest way that I do it and how I suggest for people is to take notes during conversations of just like key things that people are saying. If somebody repeats something 4 times, I'm writing that down and then I'm going to ask a question about it. Hey, I'm curious, you've mentioned running out of money 4 times in our conversation. Is that something that has happened to you in the past? Is that something that you're really concerned about? How are you know what I mean? Like that's how I'm going to approach that question is I'm just going to listen to what they have to say.
Awesome.
Love it. Yeah. Love it.
That's great. That's great advice. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I just have, it's actually a question we ask all of our guests, but I'll ask each one of you. So Ben, if you can go back in your early 20s, what advice would you give yourself?
That's a great question. The advice I would give myself is probably, I think early in my career, I think I was definitely ambitious about, chasing opportunities that seemed to have the greatest potential, in terms of probably income, I would say is, how can I make the most money? And that drove some career moves that, were obviously good learning experiences. But I think the thing that I would have said to myself is focus on surrounding yourself with great people that you can learn a lot from. Like, your career is a long time, right? Like most of us work for years and years and years and years, right? It's the majority of our lives. And in those early years, I think it's so valuable to be around great people who are, one, willing to help you, but they're also the type of people you would want to emulate, right? Because I think you can learn a lot. And that ultimately, in terms of the places you can go and, the life you can create for yourself in the long term, it will pay off massively. So yeah, I would say, early on, you don't need to chase the money, chase the people that are going to help you get to the places you want to be.
I love that. What about you, Kristen?
I have 2 things I think that I would tell myself. The first one being I would go and probably hit myself on the head and be like, you don't know everything. I have that condition where I'm like, I could do anything. I realistically with time could do anything. So I think I would tell my younger self, you don't know everything and other people know more than you. And it took me a long time to figure that out of I can learn something from everybody. And so that's where I'm at now. I would have told my early 20s self, just listen, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, just be quiet and listen. That would be my first thing. And the second one, I believe, I just forgot.
Well, the first one was really good. So
Yeah.
I know, but I said it. So unless we go back and re-record that whole thing, hold on, give me a moment. Oh, there we go. I got it. Okay. And the second would be that there's nothing wrong with, right? There's nothing that you have to solve. You have the power to do things. You just need to find a place that lets you live in your strengths. Don't pick something that confines you. Don't pick a job just because, similar to yours, Ben, that pays you more money if it does not allow you to live in your strengths. So really pick roles and pick opportunities that allow you to really shine in what you are good at. So listen to people and find a role that actually lets you shine, because otherwise it's just very hard to come to work if you're not doing something that you're good at and that allows you to naturally shine in your element.
That's awesome.
I love it. And you shine, my dears.
The key was it's not always about money.
Yes.
You know, and
Yeah.
it seems like for both of you. But is it hard? So Joni and I have never really we've changed. We've bought in businesses and done stuff like that, but we've never made like a real big career change. We've always done the same thing. How difficult was it for you guys to make some big? Because you both have made a couple of career changes recently, so and to join Discover. So how tough a decision those been to make a move? It's in a similar space, but at least
Yeah. I think it's definitely challenging in the sense of, like we just talked about, sales is so much about confidence. And so, you work somewhere for a long time and you're really confident about what you're saying, right? Like being on the phone or being on a Zoom call or being in a trade show booth, like, what you're selling like the back of your hand, right? And so I think it definitely can be intimidating to make a move into something that you don't know a whole lot about. But, I would say after the first couple career moves that I made, especially making the move of leaving insurance, I sold insurance for about 5 years and then moved into the property management space. And, I think as you develop your skills, right, you build up this confidence that, actually, even though I have zero confidence about what I'm talking about, I know that I'm going to get there, right? I know that I have the skills to, study and to really learn how, in what is going on in an industry or with a product line. And so I think that confidence comes over time. Honestly, the biggest thing with for me in the career jumps I've made is, or the places I've worked, like, getting to know a new team and being around new people, learning how they operate and, how you can support them, how they can support you. And that's why I think it's so important with any like career change or job change to like really focus on the people in the team, right? Kristen and I didn't know each other before we came over to Discover. We came over at almost exactly the same time. But I knew from the industry, like people that spoke incredibly highly of Kristen. And so that gave me a level of confidence.
Right.
I'm like, all right, so I'm coming into this new situation, but I know I'm going to be with some really good people. Even though it's kind of secondhand, right? It still gives you a deal that you can rely on. So I would, my advice to anyone thinking about that is to focus on the people that you're going to be working with and kind of that environment, because even if you don't have confidence about what you're doing or what you're selling, right? If you know that the people around you are great and you're going to get support from them, then, the sky's the limit, right? The risk, the downside is actually, very low in that scenario, I would say. So Kristen, I love your perspective on that question.
Yeah, no, I think that for anyone, change is always scary. Like even for the people that you see and you're like, wow, they are probably not scared of anything. Change is scary for everyone.
Yep.
Like it is genuine because our brains are not wired to love change, right? Like we are wired to go with the things that are like that we know, right? We're designed for routine. So change is hard for everybody. But I think that deep down in your gut, you always know whenever it's time to make a change. And so it's about honoring yourself and that like, hey, I really have got to just make a change and do something. And as scary as it is, you just do it, right? You just jump for it because no matter what, it's always better on the other side, right? Because there's something in you that's telling you that you need to change. That's like, I'm afraid of heights, right? So I've zip lined a few times in my life. So the entire climb up is so scary. And this is exactly like how it is with the change, right? The entire climb up, I'm like, oh my gosh, scary. I am so high. And then even whenever I'm about to jump off, I'm like, this is terrible. Why did I do this? I don't want to climb back down. And then you just go. And then once you're going, you're like, I would have missed this. And this is so amazing. So whenever it's like approaching a change, like if you're feeling like it's something that has to happen, you just have to go with it because there's something inside of you that's like, make the change and you just got to make the jump. And once you do it, it's always better on the other side. Change is always better than staying in the same place. Even if it's not the way that you thought it would be, it's still better than staying still.
We're headed skydiving later this month. So.
And I am terrified.
In Waller, Texas. It's not that far from you. So
I'm terrified.
Good luck.
You're not going to join us?
Oh, no. I'll be on the ground. That is, I like to stay on the ground.
Cool. Well, tell us like what's next for Discover. Where are you guys headed? What are you guys looking to accomplish, in the next couple of years?
Yeah, I'll take that and let Kristen layer in some other thoughts as well. So, I would say, right now we're pretty confident about a core group of products that have been developed even before Kristen and I got there. And our big goal for this year, I think, and probably well into next year, is really just building awareness around it and getting out into the industry. Fortunately for Kristen and I, we know a lot of people already because we've been in this industry, but most people don't know what Discover is. And so we're doing all the trade shows, being heavily involved in NARPM, I would say, as well as, trying to put out content that is relevant and helpful for people in the form of the podcast that Kristen and I do. And so really it's a lot of building awareness about the brand and what we're doing. And, it's helpful. Like Kristen and I started there in February. And so we were the first ones that were really taking it to market. And so it's been great to work with folks who give us feedback that we can then take to our development team, right? You guys are on the front lines, property management every day. And so, hearing from our customers and hearing what's working and, features that could be developed that would be helpful or make things easier, right? We're really in a listening phase, I would say, to hear how folks are using it and what they would like to do with it. So those are probably the two biggest things that I would say, but we're a startup, so I'm sure there's always going to be something else that pops up that that we have to shift our focus to as well.
Yeah,
It's great.
Awesome. Good.
What about you, Kristen? Anything to add to that?
Yeah, few quick notes there. I think that with Discover, the goal is, well, for me, I think that we are fulfilling a piece that has been missing in our property management industry for quite a while. And that is the ease and ability to do outbound prospecting and also to elevate the experience that we give to our customers, to really talk about properties in a way that's not just transactional, that's not just, hey, we have to replace the HVAC, or hey, we need to do this. Instead, we're going to help you be profitable. Right? Like we are going to even help an accidental landlord turn them into an investor, right? Like really provide just that missing link to be able to show people and not just tell them tangibly how much money we're making you as a property manager and how our service here is impacting you and your goals. And then the ability to do outbound, which there are other tools to do outbound, none that are specifically geared towards property managers. So with everything that we're developing is enhancing in these ideas of being able to be that white glove service for your clients, right? You guys can implement it in and just be able to elevate that level of service because there's more competition than ever in property management. So it's all about how do we stand out and how do we really help our clients? So I think that with everything that we're going to continue doing this year is just going to enhance the products we have to then help you guys as the property manager be able to make your lives easy. Is the goal, all right? And be able to help make things easier for you.
Yeah.
So how can our listeners get a hold of you guys and learn more about you, learn more about Discover and share your podcasts and all that? And we'll put it all in the show notes as well. But if you could share,
Sure. Yeah. So our website is discover.com. So if you want to go and just play around a little bit and see some of those analysis features that Chris and I have talked about, you can find that there. Our podcast is called Grow Outbound, and you can find it on Apple Music, Spotify. We put it on YouTube as well. I don't know how many. I'd love to hear y'all's listener stats on. Are people watching on YouTube? Are they listening? I'm really fascinated by that stuff. So we're a little bit earlier in this than you guys, so we're aspiring to get to it's been really good. We talk a lot about, Chris and I share a lot about our experiences, but we're talking to vendors and property managers that are doing this as well. So I would say Grow Outbound's a great way to find us on YouTube or Spotify. And then, we can put email addresses and that sort of thing in the show notes as well. But yeah,
awesome.
It's,
are you guys on social? Any like social links you can share?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. We've got Facebook, LinkedIn. I think we have an Instagram account.
And a Twitter.
Oh, yeah.
We have a Twitter. We got all of them.
Nice.
Well, I will say that we've been using Discover, and since you guys rolled that out, we have been excited about it. So I'm really excited to kind of get this out to our listeners out there, because I think it is a need for sure. So we really appreciate you guys being on the show today. Thank you for adding so much value. You guys have been great.
Well,
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a huge honor to be asked to be on this podcast. So thank you.
Well, thank you. All right, guys. Well, we will see you next time. See ya.
You've been listening to Inside the Wolf's Den, an entrepreneurial journey with Sean and Joni Wolfswinkle. Tons of entrepreneurial podcasts are out there talking. Talking. But Joni and Sean are living it every single day. Their portfolio now includes many franchises and medium-sized businesses. We talk about the trials and motivators of successfully running a business. Join us again soon for another podcast. But until then, reach out on the website at InsideTheWolfsDen.com, on Facebook at Inside the Wolf's Den, on Instagram at Inside the Wolf Den. We'll see you again soon. This is Inside the Wolf's Den. We'll see you next time.